Sean Maupin. Sean Maupin is The Dead Man Rules on Gab, my latest follower. Thank you so very much. It is Peter Vidala. Welcome to the Church of Gab. I am your former fake news anchor here in front of a fake fire. Looks like we're having some delay with the fake fire. Must be that net. There it is. Net neutrality gets you every time, right? Hey, listen, I'm not a real pastor. A lot of times when all of those fake news anchors began to really lay into the good Judge Roy Moore in Alabama, best to just let him finish, Roy. Like Clark said in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. It really makes you want. Who is really the creepy aggressor here? Is it the fake news anchors, or is it the good judge who's, one of the best guys in this country? This guy has fought for the Ten Commandments. He's fought the sin of sodomy, which if you check out my video, and by the way, I want to just give a quick. I feel like I don't feel anything. Shout out is such a millennial term, and we don't. So many millennials are so they're millennials, and they're ignorant, they're weak-willed, and they throw temper tantrums over the dumbest things. Why? Because they're triggered by the fake news media. Boomers were messed up severely by the fake news media, and I got to turn that down because that fireplace is distracting me a little bit. Got to have a fake fire, right? I'm a former fake news anchor. Got to have my fake fire. Christmas time, right? None of this is real, okay? As I give a shout out to latest followers on Gab, we have Freddie. Freddie, I'm not seeing the username, but we have Freddie, Tammy, and several others. Here we have Art Rat on Gab. Thank you, Art Rat. On the First Church of Gab. The First Church of Gab. I like the sound of that, don't you? And I'm very blessed to be the fake pastor of the fake First Church of Gab, and I'm going to get to that in just a moment, because of course we worship Christ for real. But I'm going to tell you why I call this a fake church in just a moment. We've got Beatles Baby, JJ Wojcik. Are you the guy that made Apple before Tim Cook messed it up? And by the way, since Steve Jobs died and the sodomite Tim Cook took over, my iPhone has just been it's been bugged. It's just buggy. It's super buggy. It doesn't just work. Tim Cook, there's no virtue in that kind of lifestyle, but that's another video for another day. Actually, you can check out right now Boston Wrong, and you're going to hear right in the hub of the universe, you'll hear people interrupt with a hail, S-A-T-A, and they're not talking about Santa Claus, like on Saturday Night Live. Thank you, Art Rat. Julie, welcome to the First Church of Gab. Julie, welcome to the First Church of Gab. Strange Russian name, and we love Russians, Ukrainians. They're really based people over there. Welcome. All across the world, from the hub of the universe. Boston is where it all started, and I'm so sorry for our fake news. We're going to get there. DAHLKE. Again, either a foreign name or a moniker, but whoever you are, we thank you for being here in the First Church of Gab, and I think we mentioned Tammy. Freddie Cassini, and Baron Latikin. Thank you, Baron Latikin, for being here in the First Church of Gab. Real Daniel Gonzalez. You're not an illegal, are you? Okay, good. Just checking. Welcome, Daniel, and thank you. Thanks for following. It's amazing when you speak the truth, how it just kind of resonates with so many people. here in the First Church of Gab. Okay, so if you'd like to make a donation, by the way, feel free. In as much as it looks like I'm just kind of a guy talking in front of a camera, I actually have a really big vision for a really big project that I'm actually going to ask for your help on. More on that as it becomes available, but what you want to do is, if you're watching this somewhere other than Gab, just go ahead and click on over to Gab, go to my home page, click on the TV or videos link. You can actually just go to gab.ai slash Peter Vidala slash lowercase the letters TV, just like a TV. It's got to be lowercase though, otherwise, doesn't quite connect yet. I'm sure Andy and the gang, Ustav, how you doing, Ustav? Love those honorary Russians as well as the real ones. We have a good time. He's going to be on NPR this week. I don't know why. He wants to oblige the fake news. Sometimes it's fun to just kind of mess with them every once in a while, though, because they think all they want to do is ambush you if you're a real person. I've found, and anyhow, but to that note, I'm not a real pastor. I've listened, of course, as I've covered in several videos now, how the fake news has ambushed a really, in my opinion, one of the most upstanding citizens in existence in the United States, Justice Roy Moore. He's a judge, for crying out loud. No offense intended by that French there. For crying out loud, I don't know. But he, one of the things one of the tactics the fake news anchors and anchorettes like the demon Megyn Kelly. Thank you again, Fox News. And what they do is they're like, well, you purport to be a man of the cloth. It's like, like it's some kind of, just insinuating left and right that these folks are not worth their salt, left and right. Just in case you can get the point, actually left, right for you guys. And it's really, it's troubling. It's troubling. I'll tell you, I am not. I don't happen to be a man of the cloth. I'm a man of God. This is an NIV, by the way. I don't recommend it. Stick with the King James version, because this is commercial, just like the fake news. It's easier to read sometimes, and I'm sorry for even mentioning it, but it helps. Anyhow, I am a man of not the cloth, but a man of flesh and blood. Darlings, gentlemen, darlings and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, if you will. Don't want that to be, taken the wrong way. So I say the Church of Gab, but let's kind of get this out of the way. I muted Gab today, so you can't hear all the likes. But thank you for that like. I heard that like, that digital amen. Thank you. This is not a real church. I shouldn't have to say this, but I do. Never really liked never cared for televangelism much. I did, it messes with the medium. It sometimes, if you're not careful, there are a lot of men of God you can learn from. If you're a lady, women of God you can learn from. A lot of ladies like Joyce Meyer's teaching. I don't recommend it for men. And the like. Nancy Lee DeMa, really good, godly people. Beverly LaHaye, Concerned Women for America, and can't forget those 1 million moms. We just don't want to get them ticked off, because you don't want to be on their bad side. No, you do not. Remember that, President Trump. Don't get on the bad side of 1 million, 1 million moms, because they will kill you. Anyway, God love the American Family Association and Tim Wildman. Tim Wildman and Don Wildman. They were Tim Wildman was, I get them confused sometimes. They were actually the first, though, the father. I want to say Tim. Yeah, Tim. Is it Tim? It's Tim Wildman was the father there, and he really he was among the first to really kind of call attention to the kind of fake news appropriation of reality, and the threat that media poses to the I guess the consciousness of Americans, regular Americans like you and me. And you know, but then he kind of lost track of it. He let it spin out of control, and he's kind of lost his handle on the entire media industry, really. And so they try really hard, but they've gotten into this boycott game where they don't. It's like putting out fires after they've already started, and so and they lost control of it. You know, and it's I know, like, getting the irony back there, but anyhow, I am not a I'm not a man of the cloth. I am as I mentioned, a former fake news anchor, and I trying to help you understand that when you watch a televangelist on television, and this is why I'm not terribly fond of them. You cannot replace the church experience with this. This is a substitute. This is a fake substitute for church, and in a better time and place, I wouldn't recommend this at all. This is the digital evangelism, so-called digital evangelism here in the United States is kind of it's a feeble substitute. It's a feeble substitute for actual church, and nobody has. I don't want to say nobody has done so, but I've really sought the kingdom, really with everything, I have, everything I am, for the longest time, and I don't take any pleasure in saying this, but I have not found a church that even follows this, this, let alone the actual Word of God. And this is kind of the NIV is, and let me explain why I'm down on the NIV real quick. Basically, the NIV, without informing its readers, went and changed itself, gender neutralized everything. It's extremely liberal. Just stay away from it. Just stay away from the NIV. Because chances are, if you buy one today, you're actually buying a super leftist influenced one. So let's kind of rein in how we got to this point here. And by the way, I've studied the church formally, both formally and informally, in both the Catholic and the Protestant kind of spheres. At the likes of the very leftist Gordon College right here in Boston, which again, it's trying to put out fires now. And the president within the last few years was attacked for affirming that marriage is what it is, and it just came under siege from the rest of the city because it's been too afraid all along. It's had one foot in the world of leftism. Without and then one foot in the world of let's try to stand for, and they've gotten to a point where the president said, well, enough is enough, but it's too little too late, because Gordon College, of course, it's still coming under fire from the government in all kinds of weird ways. And what this should illustrate to us, as well as the death of the church in America in general, which we're gonna get through and we're gonna thrive, but what this should teach you, PewTube and America, is that, and church, is that you can't run a church by the fake news rules. What do I mean by the fake news rules? Because but this is just it. This is the media has exerted such an influence on the church, and I always after I recommend that you read Scripture, because the words of Christ are above everything else. If you want to know what happened to us, what happened to boomers, Neil Postman, back in 1985. Wonderful year for media. It was the year of Les Miserables and Back to the Future. Wonderful things came out of 1985, the year that we got, the year that 1984 didn't happen. Anyhow, so Steve, Adam and Steve, right? The first two people, according to the leftist media. But the media has exerted such a huge influence upon us that, see, this is not a substitute for church. But for a lot of us, unfortunately, this is all we have. This is all we have. Why? Because you go to your local church and your pastors are afraid. They're shaking in their cloth, because they're men of the cloth. They're men of cloth. Like the fake news anchors, were kind of insinuating, I guess. Oh man, so patronizing, really, and anyhow, so essentially, what pastors have done without realizing it over the last 75 years is they have sought to compete with the likes of television. How have they done this? Well, they've you've set up these rock concert churches for one. So they're starting off right away, starting off the service. You're setting up your audience for now, like Kurt Cobain before he committed suicide said, okay, here we are now, entertain us. As Joshua Harris pointed out, another man of God, regardless of what the fake news HuffPos say. The fake news has trained people, has trained even the pastors to have a spirit of fear that doesn't become them, and pastors have been afraid to charge. Pastors have been afraid to really charge their parishioners with the responsibility of living this above everything else, because they can't do it themselves. They're afraid of losing tithes. A lot of them, they're professional pastors. They're looking to be, like the pastors they see on television, and those are not credible. It's a show. It's a show, and you can't replace. You can't replace the church experience with this. You're not in church right now. This is not a substitute for church. However, because this is such a depraved time in American history where the church has not adequately taken on the sin of sodomy, the sin of homosexuality, the sin of abortion, and right now the church is particularly, I do hate to say it, it really exists in corners of both Catholicism and evangelicalism. For whatever reason, Catholics, I've heard Catholics, quote, I've heard homosexualist priests, preach, we need to be more tolerant, more, we're going to love the homosexuals right out of their sodomy. They just need a little more love and they'll stop doing it. It's weak. It's just, it's really weak, and it comes from a place of fear rather than a place of, well, this is the truth of God. This is what we know. So, just as, what was his name? Charles Finney, the great, the great revival preacher of ages past, of American history, said that if the pillars of government are falling down, I am paraphrasing, I don't have that quote here, but if the very pillars, the very fabric of society is being torn apart, and that's what fake news is doing to us. It's you can't blame the politicians, you can't blame the teachers or the government workers. You have to blame the conscience of the nation. What's the conscience of the nation? The conscience of the nation is Christ, is the church. We, the church, we people who believe in this, and right now we're being tested like never before. We're being tested like never before because radio and television took America by storm like nothing else. You had records media essentially programmed us. You can see my short video on being triggered. What does that really mean? Well, people are triggered today. Millennials are triggered, are susceptible to being triggered because they're programmed. You have to be programmed before you can be triggered. Think of a post-traumatic stress disorder a Vietnam vet or something that they, every time they hear a loud noise, or sometimes when they hear that loud noise, it will trigger, and all of a sudden, that event that was so life-threatening to them that they just have such a hard time shaking it. It'll come to life again, and they'll be right back there in that jungle in Vietnam. And they'll hit the floor, or they'll start screaming, or they'll act in such a way that those of us who have not been so self-sacrificial as our beloved soldiers, we just can't understand it. Because we're not, but millennials who haven't fought in wars, they've been sheltered, and just kind of lived a, compared to the soldier, by all accounts, a pretty cushy life here in the United States. Often, welfare folks, or et cetera. And everybody goes through hard times. And Jesus told us to care for the poor. But these folks, they haven't fought in a war to help us, and they're triggered nonetheless because they've also been trained, but not by actual kind of life threats, which I think is kind of excusable. It's because our parents, our whole lives, and I am a millennial. I regret to repeat. Our parents grew up. Many of us who perhaps were not could have been better informed, were brought up. And by that I mean about 97% of people who grew up, look at Congress. All these Congress people, they think they have to talk to these fake news hacks because they're like gods to them. Because this device here kind of gives the false impression of omnipresence, a quality of God. You basically have this idol that's created daily by electronic media. It's been said that the idols simply moved from Olympus, back in the Greeks, they believed all the Greek gods lived on top of a mountain, to Hollywood, or New York, I guess, if you will, in the case of this. And I have to reiterate here that Fox News is it's no better than the rest of them. They're just really, really good at their idolatry, and they hate Christians. Oh boy, do they hate Christians at Fox News. Trump is going to catch up to that. He's a boomer too, so you have to, he lived in this media world, and he understands it a little bit better. That's why he doesn't. He doesn't. These people aren't celebrities to them. They're just, he gets it. He's one of them. He's not impressed by it because he was one of them, doing the reality TV circuit and all that wonderful fake news stuff. But I really want to bring us back to. I want to keep bringing you back to. I'm not doing my job. I'm being a disingenuous televangelist, if you will. And notice how anytime you put tele in front of anything, it makes it less credible. Say like telemarketing, televangelist. Marketing is okay. Telemarketing, we want to get rid of those telemarketers. Evangelist. Even the Apple folks are all about evangelize. Every Apple owner used to be an evangelist. Not so much anymore. I don't want to be a televangelist, because there is that. You notice telemarketer, televangelist. There's that cheapening quality that the tele prefix kind of lends itself to, and so what I want to do is the reason I reach out this way is because I know that 99% of you don't have a church that follows this, and so what have the fake news media and the fake news and other media in Hollywood, what have they scared American pastors out of saying? Like what what are some of the things that pastors today, why are some of the reasons that your local church is not a safe place for you to be? We all know about that pastor who committed suicide in Mississippi. He committed suicide in Mississippi It almost could have been what he was doing. It was sad to watch as he essentially, in my estimation, I can't. It's not ours to judge lest we be judged. Although we are to discern behavior and learn from it. And it seemed to me that the pastor in the video where he invited the fake news vipers into his church to badger himself. He first used the name of Christ and a Christmas carol to open up the service, and he also brought his congregation, and my heart goes out to all of you who are in that church. He brought his congregation members out, and rather than be a strong leader, that kind of Trump personality who defends the weak and is big enough, like in that kind of godlike way, that we all strive to be perfect as Christ is perfect. Rather than defend them, he almost, even though they were standing behind him, he almost seemed to be hiding behind them, and there was a tone in his voice as he gave that final press conference that he was almost begging the fake news for mercy. What I saw in his addressing those fake news anchors who came, the vipers from the fake news, what he was doing is like, well, all of my family are here today. What he really was saying, that pastor who would later shoot himself right here, he was like, I've got my whole family here, guys. Is this, you really want to do this? Is this really what you want to do to me and at Christmas? And it's always a bad idea to approach any kind of media situation looking for mercy, because they don't have any. First of all, especially regarding the allegations, which may or may not have been true. He cited Roy Moore. I do believe Roy Moore is a good and innocent judge insofar as those kinds of things were concerned. But focusing on the pastor who committed suicide in Mississippi, I can't remember his name, and honestly, it's probably better off that we don't. But again, we only Christ will judge. This is my take, my reactions. It's not on authority by any god. Like I said, I'm just a man of flesh and blood. So he really was begging the fake news for mercy, and that's not the fake news will never grant you any mercy. They only want to push their agenda, and especially at a time when the fake news itself, the whole fake news industry is weak, because they and the fake news and Hollywood is both reeling from its own internal havoc in that it's a dying industry, and so everybody in the fake news is running scared. They're just looking for shock tactics, same as they've always done, but they're turning up the heat tremendously. Of course, they want to move on from this quickly, because now, according to fake news mythology, they're the bullies. As for me, as Christians, it's like, we gotta kind of, if we're to learn anything from this, we can't blame the fake news, because they're not Christians. They don't have the truth of Christ. They don't have the strength of Christ. They don't know what a real man is, what a real woman is. And they don't, because pastors haven't been doing their job, which brings me to kind of our final point. Why is it that so many of us, so many of you, even here, especially in the hub of the universe, I'm not going into a lot of fine theology points, but I do want to hit one hard, because it's a very important one. Men are afraid to be men within the Christian church. Women are afraid to be women, and this is something that's been drilled into us by the fake news media. A tidal wave of androgyny is drowning the church. Your church is no exception, and this is why you don't feel comfortable in church. This is why your pastors, this is why your pastors are electing contrary to the express direction of God in this book, women are not to serve in a position of authority over men, and this applies to
kind of wrap this up
the
because
church.
I know you want me to
This
at this
applies
point,
to
and
government,
we do have
and this
kind of time
applies to
restrictions,
the family.
thanks to the wonderful principle of technological determinism, which I would advise you to kind of look up and look into. I will cover it in depth at a later time, but men need to be men within the church so that women can feel free to be women. We need to have strong fathers, and it's difficult because a lot of us have been ill-advised by people who have spent their lives kind of listening to the fantasy world, watching the fantasy world represented by this device. And by the way, that there's always a danger. Remember, I said this is not a real church. You may be watching this in a church. A lot of pastors have seen fit to show these videos from the hub of the universe because a lot of pastors I've spoken to have admitted, look, this is our fault. We are doing something wrong here, and I am so. I'm just humbled that they would acknowledge that. But we need to start being men first of all. We need to stop blaming women. It's a hard pill to swallow, the red pill, if you will. But part of that, if I'm to be honest with you completely, is reminding you all the time and ceaselessly that this is an illusion. This is not real fellowship. Perhaps it will lead to fellowship as you link up with more of my followers on Gab and across the free internet and beyond. By the way, if you'd like to give, click on over to my homepage on Gab, click TV, and click on any of the videos with yours truly in them. And you'll be able to just hit that appreciate button. That will help you out. It's not free to create all of these and really wonderful projects on the way. If you feel that my message, if you know that my message has contributed solid value to your life, whatever it is, that ethereal, elusive thing that for whatever reason you feel you're not getting in your church, and especially here in the hub of the universe, so many pastors are scared to talk about the things I've talked about today. They don't get it. They don't get it, and they pretend that they do. And that's not a problem of the fake news. That's our problem as flesh and blood followers of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Well, hopefully next time we'll get this fake fireplace back up and working. And thank you so much, Jeannie B, for following. I see that like. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.